Hey guys, welcome to Infinity. I am the MashUp man, and this video is about how I made the game Blind Dating for the second Brackeys Game Jam. If you don't know Brackeys, he's a YouTuber who makes videos on video game development and has helped me so much in making games in the past. I'll definitely recommend giving him a watch. But this video is not about him. The Brackeys community hosted a game jam in February, marking the second game jam that they've organised. If you want to watch my video on the game I made for that game jam, then the link's in the description. For those who don't know, a game jam is an event, or rather time period, in which people have to make video games spanning normally from 24 hours to 1 week. This game jam, like the last one, lasted 1 week. And also, like last time, I decided to document some of my process. The theme for this game jam was Love is Blind, probably due to the fact that Valentine's Day was a week before this started. Personally, I didn't mind much of this theme, but it didn't offer me much in terms of variety, and from the Discord chat I could tell people weren't a fan of the theme, but I had a few ideas flowing through my head. Now normally I would stick to the basic 2D platformer games, but this time I decided I wanted to try something different. And with this theme, the ideas I had were clicker games, or more specifically simulation games. Simulation games are the types of games that try to recreate real-world activities or situations, obviously allowing some artistic license. Popular simulation games include Sims, Roller Coaster Tycoon, City Skylines. Hey, I guess even FIFA's considered a simulation game, but there's one type of simulation game that my mind stuck with, and I felt like I could do the most with considering the theme, and that is dating games. Dating games are a weird subgenre. Some dating games can be done extremely well, like Dream Daddy made by Game Grumps, or Hatterful Boyfriend or Doki Doki Literature Club. What makes or breaks these games tends to rely on their character, but you also get some very risque types of dating games, like Honey Pop, or dating games that tend to not bring any effort at all. I don't really have an example for this, but it wouldn't be difficult for you to find one online. It will probably be fan-made with some existing franchise. I had two basic ways I could take the game. I would either make a dating game where you romance a blind girl, or a blind dating game where you go on blind dates and have to try and score as high a score as you can in each date. Both these ideas had great promise. With the first idea, I could really play into the satirical humour of dating a blind person, and probably have some serious tones in there somewhere. But with the second idea, I can make it easier for people to jump in and out the game, and add a lot more character to, well, more characters. In the end, I went with the second idea of a blind dating game. However, looking back at it now, I should have probably chosen the first idea. It's not that my second idea wasn't as good, but I probably didn't take into consideration at the time how busy I would be during the week. Day 1. As this was a Saturday and I was heading home for the weekend, I had a lot of time to spend on this game, especially on the train. I started setting down the basic mechanics such as a reading of dialogue with the dialogue boxes. Once this was down, the most important part of the game was finished already. For the text, I was originally using the normal inbuilt UI text that Unity provides, but I decided not long after that I would use the Unity asset TextMesh Pro, which makes the text a lot crisper and nicer to look at. I also gave the option to read the dialogue in a different text font. I had the idea that each date would have their own font, which actually I forgot to implement, as in I just remembered this as I'm writing out the script for this video. And just as day 1 came to a close, I implemented a different type of dialogue. Now normally you would have two different types of dialogue reading. They would read the text, and either they would wait for a continue input such as the click of the mouse button, or they'd wait for a certain response as in choices. This can obviously differ from game to game, but this tends to be the basic layout for most of these games. So I decided to add the option to, after some dialogue is read, to choose a response. This is done in these 3 buttons that pop up when the dialogue reader reads a line of dialogue that is marked an option, and each of these 3 buttons will make the date respond with a different sentence. Day 2. I didn't know at the time, but day 2 was the second and pretty much last day I would have the most time to work on this game. So I worked on getting nearly all the necessary game mechanics finished. It would be pretty boring if, on a date, you only saw the sprite of the date that didn't move at all or change, so I added a property to each dialogue line that would include an emotion. This was an enum class that would either be normal, happy, sad, angry, confused, nervous, or special. Each date would have a different sprite for each emotion. This adds a lot more life, for you would be able to see the date react, especially with what option you chose to respond with. Now a date wouldn't be a date without a scoreboard at the end, of course. So I implemented a start and end of the date that will amend your score depending on what responses you choose, and would end the date displaying how well you did on that. I was feeling extremely happy about how this game was turning out, and after having all the things down, I thought I wouldn't need much more effort to finish in the following week, but well, I was wrong. Day 3. For the next few days I was quite busy as I had lectures during the day, and it was one week where I had something on pretty much every evening of the week except for Wednesday. And I also had deadlines coming up, so I needed to use my time wisely. So seeming as though I had put a lot of effort into the first 2 days, I took it easy and spent day 3 adding more information, such as displaying information at the end of the date, such as the date name and the score. I also added the option for a date replay, so that people will find it much easier to replay a date so they can find all the different responses if they wanted. Day 4. In day 4, I did, well, nothing. Day 4 was a busy day, so I didn't have much time to work on this game in that day. Day 5. As the idea for this game was to play out multiple dates, I implemented a date selection screen that would create a button for each date in the game. When any of these buttons are clicked, it will display a dating profile on the right side of the screen, which will display info about the date. Right now, it would show all the info regardless of whether you had gone on the date or not. The idea that I implemented later was to hide all the info on any date that you had not gone on yet. This will fulfill the blind part of the theme, where people will go in blind to each date not knowing who or what to expect. Day 6. In day 6, I did nothing again. This was a super busy day as I had lectures and had to spend the evening preparing some coursework to submit the next day, and in the evening I had music practice for one of my societies. But when I got home, I did mess around on the piano a bit and worked out a good soundtrack for the game background. Day 7. The last day. There was so much missing from my game, only the mechanics were down, and probably worst of all, I had always thought the deadline was on Saturday, which it was, but I thought it was at midday and not 7 AM in the morning. On top of all that, I was busy in the evening with another society music practice, so in the morning I recorded the music I had made up the night before and got that in the game. It doesn't sound so clean since it was recorded by placing my Yeti microphone on the end of my keyboard, but it somewhat suits the game as it feels like it's playing in the background. My original plan was to have about 4 or 5 dates in the game, 2 guys, 2 girls, and 1 miscellaneous date. The first guy, I had the idea of making a bad boy, one with a leather jacket, loves motorcycles, the typical stuff. And while I could have kept it very cookie cutter and simplistic, when I was writing the date out, I ended up adding more characters to the guy than I thought. I wanted this guy to appear hard as nails and rebellious, but as I was writing this guy, I ended up making him have a sensitive side, and if you were to choose a path that would result in the best date, you would soon realise he's a bit misunderstood and feels looked down upon. Now, after I'd put all my effort into this guy, I realised I had already used up way too much time, and so I then moved on to the girl. The idea I had for the first girl was a beauty vlogger, stereotypically a little vain and sort of basic. I would have added more depth into this character like the first guy, but I was really running out of time, so I made her pretty simplistic. By the time I had written and implemented these 2 dates and drawn the sprites, it was already too late to do much more. I added more sound effects in the game, again using the keyboard to indicate the outcome of one's choice. Before, I had a score counter in the top, but I didn't want people to see how well they were doing on the date, because if I was recreating a date, you don't get a score for what you say. So if you say a good response, you hear this. If you say a bad response, you hear this. And for an okay response, you just hear this. In a way, it's sort of part of the reaction of the date, if you imagine it like a change in pitch of their voice. I was almost done, and I noticed that transitioning to the start of the date seemed very abrupt and such, where you would click to start the date and then immediately they'd be right in front of you. So I added a bit of UI animation to drag the date into view at the start, which also works as some sort of reveal. And so, at 3 AM, when I'd done as much as I could to somewhat complete the game, I submitted it. The artwork was a little sloppy, some mechanics I would have liked to have were left out, and only 3 dates were in the game, but I was somewhat happy with it. And it helped that I felt like I'd done something more innovative than a simple 2D platformer, which seems to be the default go-to for most of the games submitted. Now, if you noticed I said 3 dates, that's because I haven't talked about one of them. So if you want to know what this 3rd date is, or you just want to play the game yourself, you can go play the game on itch.io and just search the MashUp Man or blind dating. The link will also be in the description. So that was my process. I thought that since you guys enjoyed the last Game Jam video I did, I'd make this one. And in terms of the future of this channel, I've been working on a game recently that I will start making development videos on as soon as possible, as it's a game project I want to completely make from start to end, as most games I make don't make it past the prototype stage. I will also be considering streaming part of this process too, so keep an eye on this channel for streaming, hopefully regularly if I can find out a good schedule. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like and subscribe. I am the MashUp Man, or with the recent name change, MashUp Games, and I am signing out. Peace.